animavorex. Hieromancer Kale Drust stepped out of his stasis chamber, brushing dust from his coat as he moved. Luna was halfway through its night cycle, and while Drust no longer needed sleep, he had grown accustomed to the full 30 lunar days of regeneration. His attendants and adepts waited silently in the shadows beyond the chamber, their eyes flickering with faint reverence and barely concealed anxiety. They understood better than most the toll his mastery exacted, how the accumulation of souls within him was both a weapon and a curse. Contained within his physical body, his personal collection of souls now surpassed 100,000, each whispering secrets and curses, their voices echoing within his fractured mind. The animatrix inhibitor embedded deep within his skull was vital. It demanded the full lunar night's passage to keep his merged consciousness in check. Tonight, however, that must be abbreviated, an interruption in his plans. There were tasks more urgent than rest, whispers of the coming ritual needing immediate attention. His subordinates moved with disciplined silence, ready to assist, knowing that any delay could unbalance the fragile tether between him and the chaotic spirits he commanded. With a curt motion, Drust dismissed their presence and pressed onward, determined to reclaim the lost days for the dark work that only he could complete. He depended heavily on the whispering voices of certain souls to assist his work, but many others refused his commands, dissonant, stubborn, uncooperative. He shook his head, fighting to muffle the roaring chaos, the babbling chorus that clawed at his mind like 1,000 scrawling demons. With a precise adjustment to the inhibitor, he managed to dampen the pleas, silencing the worst of the shrieks, though their presence still gnawed at the edges of his awareness. His gaze shifted upward, his arcane augmented vision piercing through over 1,000 feet of lunar regolith and titanium-reinforced concrete. With a flick of intent, he gained a clear view of the night sky above the Sanguis Nexus. Then, with a thought, he linked his perspective directly to the starfield through the orbiting Deep Space Telescope constellation, an interconnected web of celestial observation. It was time. The stellar alignments were nearly complete. Drust lingered here, not in awe, but in his own cold vanity. He watched as the last of the celestial sigils flickered into manifestation across the void. A final gesture spoken in silence. The final mystic rites would need to take place within this stellar alignment, which would hold firm for the next 2 standard weeks. Everything was proceeding according to his design. Kale Drust moved deliberately along the labyrinthine walkways beneath the Nexus, each footfall resonating through the hollow corridors like a tolling bell. The chamber where the ritual awaited was no more than a shadowed sanctum carved from twisted metal and ruined flesh, kept fresh by arcane means. A place where darkness had itself taken form. The gnawing presence of voices whispering from the depths of his mind, some pleading, others hostile, many simply cacophonous in their relentless chorus. He focused inward, tightening his thoughts against the chaos, knowing that allowing the voices to rise unchecked would unravel what fragile sanity he still possessed. He paused again to make an additional adjustment to the animatrix inhibitor. He had stopped in a narrow alcove, eyes flickering behind the augmented visor as he surveyed the path ahead. The way was lined with remnants of failed experiments, discarded skulls, and fractured talismans, reminders of his endless pursuit. Power was a game of patience, he mused silently. Every sacrifice, every fractured soul brought him one step closer to mastery. The ritual was inevitable now. The stars themselves have ordained it. Soon, the culmination would occur, and he would seize the chaos, a grasp so tight that nothing could escape the chains he intended to forge. He drew a deep, steadied breath as he approached the chamber entrance, the air thickening with ozone and a sickly tang of congealed blood. The threshold was guarded by the remnants of ancient arcana, locked, sealed, cursed. He regarded the imposing edifice with a mixture of pride and amusement at the idea that anyone might oppose him. Still, this was his monument, the vessel through which he would pry the secrets from death itself. Inside, the glow of arcane runes and pulsating energy cores cast grotesque shadows across the vaulted ceiling. Artifacts and bones, fused with twisting steel, formed an ageless altar dedicated to suffering. The air shimmered with an unnatural sheen, as if the very fabric of reality was being consumed. The whispering voices swelled anew, an unending litany of agony, secrets, and the myriad lives sacrificed to fuel his ambitions. To outsiders, it was horror incarnate. To him, it was the beat of his own relentless heart, pulsing in sync with the dark magic flowing through this necromantic engine. The chamber beneath the Nexus was a cathedral of shadows and flesh, ebony metal twisted around shattered bones, alien artifacts carved with ancient runes, and crystals that pulsed like a heartbeat of darkness. At its center, the device loomed a towering nightmare of swirling runes, darkened steel, and pulsating cores. Its surface shimmered with an unnatural sheen, as if it devoured the very light around it. The air hung heavy with ozone, and the scent of blood, a sickly aroma mingling with the faint whisper of trapped spirits. A constant, dreadful chorus of voices hummed in the shadows, whispering of suffering and secrets best left unknown. The core of the machine throbbed, a twisting nexus of soul energy, drawing in the chaos of death, feeding his obsession with mastery over the fallen. For decades, Drust had poured his efforts into this black monument. It was a patchwork of artifacts, sacrifices, and the stolen essences of thousands of subordinates. Every soul it had captured flickered within, like stars snuffed from the night sky, their light never to return. Instead, they were twisted, siphoned to fuel his experiments, to sustain his fractured form. The whispers from the device grew louder. A never-ending lament for the lives sacrificed, each one fueling his relentless hunger for power. Now, as the device reached its culmination, the surge of dark energy rippled outward. Its glow intensified, crackling like fire and magic intertwined. Drust watched, eyes alight with mad intent. Once complete, it would forever change how the battlefield bled and died. It would secure a limitless flow of souls, chaining death itself to his will. As Drust drew closer to the heart of the chamber, he could feel the forbidding weight of its power pressing against him. Dark energy unfurled like a shadowed tide, cascading outward in a suffocating vacuum that clawed at his souls, and every soul echoing within him. The strain was greater than he remembered. The hunger of the instrument, the insatiable demand of chaos, pressing harder than ever before. He knew better than to risk lingering in its shadowed presence. With heavy boots pounding the cold steps, he moved toward the ritual platform, each step a deliberate echo of defiance. His mind spun with disorienting flashes, wavering, unsteady, but he pressed on, determined not to falter. Finally, he reached the elevated dais and pivoted to face the heart of the chamber, the nexus where his dark rites would unfold. With a sharp mental command, he summoned a shimmering force shield, an arcane barrier that suffused him with a momentary sanctuary from the relentless pull. Relief flooded through him as the oppressive vacuum eased just enough. A crooked smile touched his lips, cold and knowing, as he settled into his seat. The final act was at hand, the culmination of years of depravity and sacrifice, the unleashing of horrors long crafted in shadow. Ready now, he prepared himself to invoke the rites that would rend reality and bind death itself to his terrible will. The only needed reagent, needed for the final rite, was one last supplicant. She would need or offer her soul of her own free will. But the Nexus adepts would have seen to this. Drust was far too busy to screen the supplicants. And besides, what's one more? Just one more to add to the horrible cost of this endeavor. It didn't matter soon. Drust would have the power of a god. He gestured to an adept that it was time to begin, and with a silent nod, a chamber door opened. Without even looking to see, Drust rose to his feet and began to enter the trance needed to recite the final arcane words. He raised his arms, and as he did, his coat fell from his shoulders, leaving him standing nude, except for his heavy boots. How frail, emaciated, and weak an onlooker would have thought, had there been any. Through the door entered a beautiful woman, dressed in a flowing white robe. Her straight, dark hair neatly combed, but allowed to be free-flowing. She dared not glance around the chamber. She had prepared for this moment, and understood her role in the ritual. Drust's eyes rolled back in his head, revealing only white orbs. Hieromancer Kale Drust's voice rose in a low, guttural incantation, each word resonating with a guttural cadence born of shadow and momentum. His hands moved with deliberate, practiced gestures, weaving invisible threads of arcane energy from the ether, pulling at the very fabric of reality. Tendrils of dark mist coiled at his fingertips, shimmering with predatory power as they solidified into tangible, twisting forms, runes of ancient puissance and forbidden magic. His words, half sung, half shouted, carved into the air, echoing through the shadowed chamber and summoning the unseen. The young woman, her pale face set with stoic resolve, moved slowly and steadily across the cold, blood-slickened floor. Her bare feet made no sound, yet every step seemed weighed with the collective weight of her fate. Her dark eyes flicked towards the formidable object at the chamber's center, a towering, obsidian altar adorned with carved glyphs and pulsating crystals that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. Her slender form, draped in a simple white robe that fluttered slightly with each measured step, betrayed no fear, only a grim acceptance. As she drew closer, the faint glow of her surroundings reflected in her eyes, which shimmered with quiet desperation and unwavering resolve. Every movement was purposeful, driven by an unspoken understanding of her role in the accursed ritual. The chamber, replete with twisting metal and the flickering light, seemed to pulse in time with Drust's spellcasting, an ominous stage set for a sacrifice destined to shift the boundaries of power itself. Unbeknownst to the woman was the precise moment or manner in which her life would be extinguished. Would it be a sudden, painless release into the beyond? Or would it be a slow, agonizing fade, each second stretching into an eternity of fear? These uncertain questions haunted her as her mind spiraled into overthinking, her thoughts swirling with dread. As the dark edges of her awareness drew closer, her heart began to yearn fiercely, an instinctual cry for life amid the approaching void. A fragile flicker of doubt ignited within her, a brief moment of hesitation, filled with the terror of what was to come. Regret seeped in, subtle but relentless, culminating in an overwhelming dread that chilled her core. Memories of her childhood flashed vividly, her mother's warm smile, the gentle touch of her hand, the sound of her voice echoing in her mind. In that instant, an unshakable truth blossomed. The thought of ending her life in this dread-filled way was unacceptable. She longed for more time, more moments to cherish, more love to give and receive. She yearned to hold her own children someday, to watch them grow and to build a future filled with hope. Her desire to love and be loved burned more fiercely than her fear of death. And above all, she clung desperately to the unwavering resolve. She did not want to die. Not now. Not like this. It struck in a blinding burst, a dark energy erupting from her solar plexus, spreading outward in a torrent of shadowed power that consumed her in an instant. Like black lightning crackling through the void, the force obliterated her body, disassembling her on an atomic level, peeling away flesh and bone until she was nothing but a thick, sickly vapor dissipating into the cold air. Yet within that annihilation, arcane means slowed time to a crawl for her. To her perception, it was as if an entire week had passed in the span of a single breath, each moment stretched, twisted by sorcery to grant her an illusion of eternity. While her physical form was torn apart, her consciousness remained intact, her spirit resisting the darkness. Her thoughts, desperate and unyielding, cried out in a fierce, unwavering voice, her will to survive burning brighter than ever. Despite the chaos, despite the destruction, she refused to accept her end. She was no longer willing to fade into oblivion without resistance. Her defiance echoed through the arcane web, a stubborn flicker of hope amidst the suffocating void. It began slowly, almost imperceptibly, a faint dark pulse emanating from the central object. Then, with relentless certainty, a soul-sucking vacuum erupted, its force drawing her essence into itself with unyielding hunger. A deafening whooshing filled the chamber, intensifying as the dark wave expanded, swallowing sound and space alike until silence fell suddenly and completely. In that instant, Drust's spell reached its culmination. Time snapped back and the trance shattered. Confusion seized him. What had just transpired? Alarm surged as the unnatural silence washed over him, an instinctual warning that something had gone awry. He paused, breath hitching, realizing unclothed and disoriented that he had slumped into his throne, exhaustion crashing over him in heavy waves. His mind was racing, voices rebounding with renewed ferocity, claws tearing at his consciousness. His regeneration was incomplete, the chaos threatening to unravel his fragile mind. Amidst the distraction, he unwittingly allowed the force field to lapse, exposing himself to the abyss. Instantly, the vacuum seized him, his corrupted flesh, his collection of stolen souls, all vulnerable to its insatiable pull. Screaming spirits and writhing echoes of the damned fought desperately, clawing at his psyche, seeking to undo all he had wrought. His already fractured form teetered on the edge of collapse, the stress threatening to burst the tenuous seams of his being. And then, suddenly, the central object, the animavorex, glitched. A single flicker of violet light pulsed across its surface. In a final savage burst, it erupted skyward, a torrent of dark energy piercing straight through the chamber's ceiling. Pieces of molten titanium and shattered concrete rained down as the torrent tore upward, blazing a jagged path through the air. It extended into space, a luminous beacon, visible for light years, its glow pulsating with malevolent power. For 5 seconds, that dark surge illuminated the void. Then, abruptly, it vanished, leaving only silence and ruin in its wake. A gaping hole yawned in the chamber's core. Atmosphere roared outward, escaping in a violent gust that carried with it Hieromancer Kale Drust, a handful of desperate adepts, and the fully intact, now finished, animavorex. The force of their escape propelled them high above the lunar surface, into an unstable orbit cast adrift in chaos, caught in the dying echoes of a ritual gone mad.